Alright, the other one that I've said quite a bit that we're going to look at is Scanf. This works similarly to getcar in the fact that it's reading stuff from the keyboard. But this time we can use format specifiers, like we've used in our printf, to get different information from the user. So for example, if I needed to get a number from the user, using getcar, it is possible, but it's difficult, where using scanf makes it really easy. So here in this first example I've got here, I've declared two variables, A and B, okay? And then I've got my scanf, which says I'm looking for a decimal integer. Remember, %d is decimal integer, and I want to store it in A. Now there's something new here. We've got this ampersand symbol, and this is actually a little advanced, and we'll learn what this means in a couple weeks' time. Okay, it's the address of operator. I might say it a couple of times, but you don't need to know what it means too much right now. But when using scanf, we have to use this operator. Okay, so if you want to store something in A, then you write ampersand A, or address of A. Okay, and it all makes sense in a couple of weeks' time. Alright, so here we want to get an integer. So if on the keyboard, let's say I typed 18 and then press enter. Okay, what scanf will do, it will go and try and find the first integer, decimal integer. So it scans and it goes, yep, that looks like an integer. Let's keep looking, yep, that looks like an integer. Keep scanning, no, that's not an integer, so I'll stop there. And then what it'll do is it will take those two characters, remember they are characters, and it will convert it into the correct type, so it'll convert it into a decimal integer, so it will take the 1 and the 8, which are characters, and convert them into an int, so we get 18. So 18 would be stored in A. Once again, we remove what's on this buffer. Okay. However, we didn't read the new line, so that stays there. Alright, then I get to this next scanf, and here I enter, let's say, 21, new line. Now, here we've still got this new line character, but it's actually not going to cause us any problems for this example, and we'll see why. So this scanf is looking for the next decimal integer. So it'll start scanning and go, no, that's not a decimal integer, so it'll skip over it. Goes, this looks like the start of an integer, yep, I'll start reading from here. Keep reading, no, the next thing isn't a decimal integer, so it's going to grab these two. And it will take those, convert them, and then store 21 in B. Now when it removes, it will remove everything before this point. So that includes this new line character it skipped over. Okay, so that leaves us with a new line here. Now that is fine if you are just getting integers from the keyboard. Okay, you don't have to worry about this new line if you're just getting integers. So another example here could be something like this. So let's start again from the start. And let's say, so firstly there should be a prompt here, but I'm not bothering with this example because I've got lots of examples. But let's say the user entered hello 18 and then enter. Now This isn't going to happen for us in this subject yet. We're going to assume that the user enters valid values, but we can deal with this quite easily because scanf is looking for the first integer. Well, h can't be part of an integer, e can't be, l can't be, l can't be, o can't be, 1 can be, and it'll keep reading and then stop there. So here it will grab that 18 and store it in here. Okay? And it will get rid of everything before it such that we're just left with a new line character ready for the next int to be entered. Okay? Now, another example here could be something like if I entered, let's say I entered 21, then I entered a space, 43, okay, and then a new line character. So here, we wouldn't stop at this second scanf and wait for input. The reason for it is because this first scanf will read and go, yep, that's part of an integer, yep, that's part of an integer. Read all that and store 21. And then we move everything across. Okay. So I'll move everything across. No, it's not going to work. Oh, oops. So we'll move everything across, hopefully. Yep. There we go, finally. And then here, we keep going because there's stuff here and there is actually an integer. So let's skip over the space and then grab the 43 and store the 43. Okay? So when testing these, you need to be careful that you only enter the information you need because if there's stuff still there and there's something there that's valid for the next read, it will read it. Okay, so now let's have a look at the next line. Let's say you ask the user to enter 2 values. Okay, so if I ask the user to enter 2 values, what I need to do is I need to know how it's separated. So here I've separated it by whitespace. Now in a format specifier, a space means something different than a space. It means any white space. So a space here could be a new line, it could be lots of spaces, it could be a tab, anything that's white space, so any character that you can't see. So here I could enter 21, let's just say I keep it simple and do a space, and then I enter 43, okay, and then my new line character at the end. What's going to happen here is I look for the first character, first decimal integer, and I get it and store it in A. I then look for some white space, which I've got, and I then look for the next decimal integer, which I've got. Okay, and so that will store the 21 and the 43. So I can store things where I grab them on the same line quite easily using scanf. I just need to know what separates them. So that would leave a new line. Okay, so that would leave /n there. Now, the next example here doesn't have a whitespace separator. Instead, it has a dot. Okay, so this dot here needs to be the separator between these two integers. So here I'd need to write 43 dot, let's say 21, new line, okay, because I pressed the enter key. This will grab the 43 and store it in here. It sees that that format is correct because there's a dot there, so that part's evaluated correctly, and then it'll see the 21, and so that'll store in B. Why did I put that in there? So that'll store in A. Okay. Now, if you put a space here instead, what will likely happen is B will become corrupted. Okay, so make sure you have the right format when you're doing this. Okay, so if you need a dot between the numbers, make sure that is correct, because you will get corrupted data otherwise. Alright, let's have a look at the next example. So this one here, we're introducing floating point numbers. So when Scanf looks for floating point numbers, if it starts with a dot or a number, it's considered a floating point number. This is important, okay? So here I'm getting two values on the same line, and the second one is going to be a float, and it's separated by some white space. For our examples, we'll just use space, okay, to keep it simple. So here I could enter something like 21 space 2.2, okay, and then a new line character. Okay, so this will grab the 21, then the space is suitable, and then it will grab the next floating point value, which is 2.2, and store that. Okay, so that works perfectly fine. Now, one common mistake that a lot of students do, especially very early on, especially being used to printf, is they'll write something like percent .2f here. You can't do that in Scanf. You can't specify how many decimal points you want the user to enter. It will accept any. Okay, so this will actually throw an error. Okay, so you can only put %f here. Now, the other thing here is if I entered .2 and then pressed enter, then inside of B I would have got 0.2. Okay. Alright, let's have a look at the next example. So this one here, I want an int and a float. Okay, and this is actually a handy way of getting the value before the decimal point and after the decimal point, and you could try this. This is another way you can do it. So what we're doing here is we've got %d and %f, but we've got no space between them. Now, we couldn't do this with an int, because if I don't put a space between them, I don't know where it's meant to break up, okay? So I just get 1212, and I'd still have to enter another value. But with a int and a float, we can actually do this. So in this example, I'm going to enter, let's say 12.43, and then I press enter. So what's going to happen here is we first look for the first int. So we go across, yep, found that first int. So go and store that in A. Now the %f will start looking for the first float. It sees the dot, so it goes, yep, that's part of a float. Keeps going, 4 is part of a float, 3 is part of a float, new line's not, so I'll stop there. And so it'll grab that and store that in there. So we get 0.43 stored in B, and we get 12 stored in A. And then we're just left with a new line character on standard in. Now, the last example is where most of you are going to get problems, and that's when using %c, so a character with scanf. And the reason for this is because %c will still grab the new line character. Okay, it won't skip over it like our floats and our ints will. So for example here, if I entered, let's say 12 new line, okay, this %d will grab the 12 off, as we've seen before, and it'll leave the new line there. Now if we were getting another int after this, that would be perfect fine because it'd skip over the new line. But because we're getting a character next, it will just grab that new line. Okay, so that's a problem. Now what you can do with scanf to get rid of new lines after you've got the values is basically you can add a space after the value that you're getting. Okay, so let's have a look at this again. Alright, so what we can do is add that space in there, and what that effectively does is, let's say I enter 18 and then press enter, is the format it's looking for is a decimal integer, which it grabs, and then some kind of white space, and a new line is considered white space. So it will put the 18 inside the A, but it will keep reading, and so it will actually get rid of everything off of standard in with that space there if you finish in a new line. So this is really handy when you've got characters coming in and you're using scanf. You can always add a space after. Okay, so even though it might not look important, that space there is important. And I've seen a lot of students who have copied examples from textbooks and stuff like that without really reading it, and they always forget this space. Okay, so make sure you understand why that space is there. It's to get rid of that new line character so that you read the next character coming in. Alright, that's it. Thank you very much.